So hello, everyone. It's fantastic that you're joining us here. I know we've got a set of people from DICE currently in the Swingland room watching as a group, and it's also lovely to see the people who are joining us online from all over the place. So my name's Bob Smith. I'm the director of DICE, and I'm delighted that this is the sort of a restoration of the DICE Talks series. So for those of you who've had a relationship with DICE for a while, we've aimed to have these monthly DICE Talks where we hear from our students, staff and alumni. We've had a long hiatus that started because of COVID, but we're now back in full effect. And the idea is that we'll have some talks in person on campus, especially when it's the sort of busy times of the year at the university. But in the quieter times, we can take advantage of the joys of technology and talk to people who are a bit further afield. And today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Dr. Sanjay Gubbi to join us. And we're just going to basically have a conversation and a catch up and talk about his conservation career and benefit from some of his wisdom, and also hear from some of his really cool stories and experiences. So just to give some background about Sanjay, he's program head for the Holomati Nature Foundation and senior scientist for the Nature Conservation Foundation. He received his PhD in wildlife and management from Kuvempu University in 2020. And the reason why we've invited him along today was because in 2006, he did his MSc in conservation biology at DICE. He's published dozens of scientific articles, hundreds of articles in the popular press, and popular books on tigers, leopards, and natural history. Going through his list of achievements and awards, I basically don't have time, so I will highlight the sort of most recent and some of the most prestigious. In 2020, he received Achieving Gurukul Fellowship. In 2019, he was given the Coexistence Award by Elephant Family. He was a winner of the 2017 Whitley Award. In 2012, was listed as among the 25 Tomorrow's Leaders, as listed by the Times of India. And it shows that the Times of India predicted well, in that he is now a current leader. And in 2011, he received the Carl Zeiss Wildlife Conservation Award. So Sanjay, it's brilliant that you can join us today. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Bob. And it's a pleasure to be talking to people from DICE, and also it's like I feel like I'm at DICE at the Swingland building and the anthropology department. It's always a pleasure to see people from DICE and also, to be part of the cohort.
Brilliant, thank you. And so yes, as you know, the format for today is basically asking you a set of questions, partly about your career, partly advice for future conservationists, and also some sort of slightly more off the wall questions, just to mix things up. But to start with a question that I always do, which is what have you been doing this week?
What's the day today? Oh, it's a Thursday. A mix of things. I was away in the field, and I was over the weekend I was in Delhi because an organization called the Habitat Trust is starting a diploma in India for conservation practitioners. So we were sitting over the weekend on Saturday and Sunday in Delhi in the hot summer, hot weather of Delhi at 39 degrees centigrade, and designing syllabus for a new course, a diploma course for conservation practitioners. But I've also been watching elephants and leopards over the week in the last 1 week.
Wow, fantastic. And so you have the sort of two roles at the two different organizations. What do they involve?
Oh, a host of things. We do a lot of research work on large cats, especially leopards and tigers. My group we have a new individual who is slowly starting to work on elephants as well, Asian elephants. We work a lot on corridors. And then, of course, this is a bit of the research part, but we do a lot of policy work with the government. We do try to do as much as possible to bring changes in on-ground conservation. That's like working with the government, working with political leaders, working with media, and a lot of different stakeholders who can make a difference for conservation. So this is a broad gamut of things I work on and my team works on.
Brilliant. And what did you want to be when you grew up? Was this a sort of a long-held dream, or did you have other ideas when you were little?
I think I had no idea, Bob. I didn't know what to do in my life. I think we were too young, growing up in semi-rural parts of southern India. I don't think I had any idea, but perhaps later, finishing my high school or my pre-university days, I think at some point of time I thought I should join the defense or the Air Force, to become an Air Force pilot, perhaps. That's
Oh, okay.
perhaps a lot of boys' dream, perhaps. But truly, I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life.
And did you ever sort of get further in this idea of joining the Air Force?
I once wrote a exam, but I don't think I did very well. Math was not my biggest forte. Of course, when I later went on to do my engineering, that was a very key subject I had to learn, and for all the 4 years of my degree. And of course, when you get into wildlife biology, you don't get away from statistics, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
we have to be glued to mathematics a lot.
And when did your love of big cats begin?
I think after my high school days, I was going to this national park called Nagarhole National Park in southern India. It's one of the outstanding places for large mammals in India. It has got perhaps biomass as much as the East African plains, 14,000, 15,000 kgs of biomass. And that's where you see a lot of large mammals. That's where I started to shift from being a hobbyist on wildlife to much more serious wildlifer and conservationist. And my first tiger was also there in Nagarhole National Park a long time ago, actually. Afternoon when I was driving around with a colleague of mine, a friend of mine actually, and we saw this beautiful herd of elephants in the water. And then about 50 meters away from the elephant herd, when I was scanning with the binoculars, and I suddenly saw something which looked a bit unusual sitting amidst a bamboo clump. And I thought it looked like a tiger. And then when I focused my binoculars, there it was actually, it was a tiger sitting just 50, 70 meters away from an elephant herd, which were completely unaware of the tiger sitting there. So that was my first first sighting of a wild tiger. And I can never forget it. It was a really beautiful one.
Yeah, fantastic. And the sort of, this might be an impossible question, but which do you prefer out of tigers and leopards, given that you've spent a lot of your career looking at both?
It's a difficult question, but charismatically and in terms of the appeal, I think tigers. Tigers are certainly my first love. I'm sorry, leopards, but, but I certainly love tigers. Yeah, it's my first love. Yeah.
And of all the things you do, what do you think benefits conservation the most?
I think talking to people, communication. I strongly feel, what we as conservationists fail to address or also recognize that communication is an extremely important part of conservation. In my opinion, conservation is 90% communication and 10% science, especially in countries with socio-economic and politics like India. You really need to talk to people. You really need to network with people. When I say networking, it's about bringing their attention, bringing their love to, and they're touching their hearts to conservation, touching their hearts to species. I think that's the most important part of my entire career, I think. And also, we need to sing beyond the choir, we need to play beyond the choir. That's a very important part of my work. And that has really got us a lot of results. I work with political leaders. I work with media personnel. I work with religious leaders. I work with social leaders. I try to see anybody who can bring something on the table to conservation. So, and you need to really package conservation and conservation science in a language they understand. That's extremely important. And I can put my hand on my heart and say that's really worked for us in India. That's really brought in a lot of good things.
Ah, brilliant. Because yes, I mean, you've written over 500 articles for the sort of popular press and international press and things like that. What can you sort of think of one particular thing that had the biggest impact in terms of what you wrote?
I think my native language or my mother tongue is Kannada, which is a language which is perhaps spoken by over 60 million people in my state. And I write books in Kannada. I alternate writing in English and in Kannada. And when people read these Kannada books, and people call me from really remote parts of the Western Ghats, where there's no mobile network, there's no phone facilities, but people trek up or go on a motorbike 3-4 kilometers where they can get a mobile network and call me and say, I read this chapter of this book and it's so much true, and we see in around our villages, and I really like that book, they say. When such people call me, recently a priest, actually, a priest from a small temple in the midst of Western Ghats, I know the place a bit, he called me, again, a similar situation. He had to drive a few kilometers to get to a mobile network, and he said, I bought this book, I love the book, and this is what I really like. And sometimes they disagree about what we write, but getting those people to talk about conservation, the people who really live amidst elephants and tigers and leopards, is something I really love.
Ah,
I think it has
fantastic.
a huge impact. Sometimes I walk into a minister's office, give my card to the secretary of the minister, and he picks up the card and he says, "Oh, you're Mr. Sanjay Gubbi. I've read the articles you've written. What do you want? Do you want to meet the minister?" You know, you get a direct access to the minister. That's the power of local language writing, and I really like it. You know, it really proven a lot for us.
Brilliant, brilliant. And if you were to give advice to someone who was sort of starting off and thinking of writing one of those popular articles, what would you tell them?
You mean popular articles or books?
Well, let's start small. We can go
Perfect.
on to books next, but yes, but you know, so something short for a newspaper or something like that.
Yeah, you need to really bring nature to people. That's the art of writing, actually. You need to really make them feel that they're amidst nature when you're writing. It's like, you know, kids go to school and do this show and tell. So you really need to show nature to people when you're writing, and they should feel that they're seeing something when they're reading your article, and they should connect. You know, it should really touch their heart. You should give examples where people can connect in their daily lives. You know, for example, nowadays when I give talks, it's always you can't obviously take a tiger to an audience, right? You can't have a tiger on a leash and make him walk into the talk. But you can show beautiful pictures, all those things. But what I do a lot nowadays is carry seeds of trees, you know, of different kinds of seeds, small, big, the ones which can fly, the ones which can are very thin, so many kinds of, and people go crazy, you know, when they're seeing a small seed which has a wing like an helicopter's propeller. There's a tree called Garucarpus americanus in southern India, and it has a seed which is wind dispersed, and it's really got propeller. Even the Shoria species, you know, the genera or Dipteria carpus, they all have wings. And you take that and make a audience fly that seed, and they go bizarre. You know, people think their heart opens up to trees and plants and to nature. So you really need to make them understand and show them these small little wonders in nature. You know, they're very interested. Their hearts open up to nature. Then it's not just the eyes and ears or the mind. The hearts open up to nature. That's what you need to do, and that's what we need to do when you're writing as well.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic. And I know my plant conservation friends talk about how plants get ignored. So it's lovely that when you're talking about tigers, you're showing them plant seeds to illustrate the importance of nature. And yeah, so in terms of writing a book, which has always to me seemed such a big and daunting thing, what advice would you give for someone thinking about that?
Discipline, and your field notes. Field notes are fantastic to write books. You know, uh, I have piles and piles of field notes from 3 decades now, and they bring out wonderful stories to write the books. And of course, book writing is a discipline. When I start a book, I make it a point that I spend a couple of hours at 4 o'clock in the morning, And you don't have phone calls, you don't have WhatsApp messages, you don't have emails, you have no talks, you have nobody disturbing you, and you have a very fresh mind. And you keep writing, and the book goes very fast then. And book is also a permanent document, right? Even if I die, 100, perhaps 50 years from now, it's found in a library, in the or on the as a digital copy somewhere in the web, and people will certainly read it. So it's sort of leaving a legacy of your experiences. And I think a lot of conservationists should do it. People get motivated by it. People really, when they read, avid readers, for example, our chief minister reads. He's the head of our state. It's very important, according to me, to document. There's so many people who have got motivated by George Chalis books, or so many other people's. David Coleman's book. I'm very fascinated by David Coleman's book. So books are very wonderful tools to reach out to people.
Brilliant. Yes. And on a related note about books, what's the one book that isn't written by a conservationist that you think every conservationist should read?
There's a book called The Argumentative Indian. It's written by a person called Amartya Sen. He's a Nobel laureate.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important book to understand economics and how it impacts society. As conservationists, we always struggle with economics, right? We know how economy drives conservation, either positively or negatively. So I really like this book called The Argumentative Indian by Amartya Sen. It's a copy which is right behind me here, and I keep it as a guide tool many times to understand economics.
Oh, fantastic. So yes, so moving on to sort of your experience of being in the natural world. What's your favorite place for wildlife? Where do you like visiting the most?
The Western Ghats, of course. That's has been our backyard, and it's one of the fantastic places to see landscape. Actually, to see, understand nature. It's not just about large mammals, but it's a fantastic landscape. Part of it, unfortunately, is in Madagascar, as people may know. During the continental drift, part of India went off to Africa. So part of the Western Ghats continues to be in Madagascar, and it's a lovely, lovely place to be in. But I also, if you gave me a second choice, I love Namibia. I was there once, and I think it's Garden of Eden. Namibia is Garden of Eden. It's a great place to be, to watch wildlife, and also just to see places with no people. You're coming from India with 400 people per square kilometer, and you go to Namibia, which is like 3 people per square kilometers. I found it fascinating. It's Garden of Eden, according to me.
Fantastic. And yes, I'm going to ask you now sort of several questions about encounters with animals. And I know you have some really interesting things to talk about. So the first question is, have you ever been outwitted by an animal? And if so, which animal, when, and how did it outwit you?
They always outwit us, all animals, right from a tick to an elephant. They always outwit us. They're much, much smarter than us. But of course, one incident was when I was injured by a leopard 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now. When there was a leopard which had come into a school in a big city, Bangalore city, and nobody knows how it landed up in the school, because it's in a high human dense area. And then,
so can you so in terms of a big city, sort of how many people live there, and sort of how far away was the school from where you would have seen sort of normal leopard habitat to be?
That's Bangalore city has a population of 10 million people. No, must be 12 million people.
Wow. Okay.
And the school was not even in the edge of the edge of the city. It was quite inside, because the outskirts of the city, Bangalore city, has a national park like Nairobi National Park in Kenya.
Okay.
So we have it's one of those cities in the world which has elephants, tigers, leopards, gaur, everything on the edge. Like Nairobi has lions and giraffes and rhinos. So Bangalore has all these large mammals on its edge, but I don't know how this leopard landed up in this school. But fortunately, it was a Sunday, so there was not much anxiety about kids in the school. But the authorities had requested me to help them to capture the leopard. That's when things went wrong, and I was a bit injured by the leopard.
Yes, I mean, you say a bit injured. It was one of those very strange situations where I think I was watching the news. I can't remember where, and it had a clip of conservationist attacked by leopard, and I was watching and thought, hang on a minute, that's Sanjay. So I mean, yes, for people listening, it is available on YouTube. But I mean, in terms of the sort of events leading up to the attack, what happened?
Okay, I was okay. I'll rephrase my my statement. Yeah, I was quite seriously injured. It needed about 6 surgeries till the last 2 years. I had a surgery.
Oh, wow.
Both my hips have been replaced now. I have artificial hips. I had
Oof.
55 stitches. One led to other, so it took a long while to fully recover. Of course, you can never fully recover because whatever artificial things that get into your body is never natural, never makes you perform the same kind of acts you can do when you had uh, when you uh, when you had natural body parts, right?
Yeah.
It's not like an automobile where you just replace it. So yeah, it was quite serious injuries, and I had to struggle quite a bit. But yeah, 3 months after the injury, I was trying to be back in the field, but because of so many other repercussions from the injuries, I fully recovered about a year and a half ago. But I really
Wow.
love going. I walk back now. I can walk. I can't walk steep. I couldn't go to Kerinchi Seblat perhaps, which I would have loved to do. But I can still walk. I walk 4 5 kilometers at a stretch, but I need some rest after that.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but it's been a wonderful learning experience. Even that leopard incidents, the injuries I had, and it also it also was an experience where you felt how prey feel, right? Leopard killing a springbok or a sambar deer or a cheetal deer, you never get to experience it. They're really powerful, believe me. I can vouch for it. They really have powerful, massive, powerful jaws. And at one point of time, the leopard was right next to my face, like a few millimeters away from me, and it growled into my ears. And that growl is still, it reverberates whenever I remember it. But the most best part was its eyes. It's really beautiful, those green eyes, and it's right about a couple of centimeters away from your eyes. It's a marvelous thing to watch. Actually, it's nothing less than a wonder of the world.
Yeah, I mean, God, that sounds so. I mean, while it was happening, um, did you feel just sort of focused on trying to get away, or what were your feelings during the event?
I think I was extremely calm. I was super calm. That's one thing when you learn when you're in the jungles. I walked a lot of trails in the Western Ghats alone. So one thing you really, especially in elephant country and sloth bear country, one thing you
Oh, we've frozen a bit. Hopefully, it
sorry,
will come back.
I'm here.
Oh, great. Yes, sorry. I just missed the last. You were talking about walking, and being calm when you're walking through elephant country.
Also, you need to know how to read the jungle. That's extremely important. The sights, the sound, the smell, the twigs breaking, the branches breaking, all these are extremely important, especially in places like India, where the wildlife are found in thick vegetation. So unlike in Africa, where you can see them at a distance in the savanna part of African continent, you can see animals at a distance. But when it's thick vegetation, you many times you walk past a tiger or a leopard, you would never have realized. I remember, I think in 2001 or 2002, one early morning in Ranthambore National Park, which is in northwest India, I and a colleague of mine, we were doing transact walks, distance sampling, collecting data about prey species. And I suddenly realized something was watching me, and I just stopped and saw 10 meters away was a big tigress, female tiger sitting and watching us into my eyes. And I had not even realized, and we were just 10 meters away from the animal. And I just squeezed my colleague's hand and I said, listen, there is a tiger, stop, stop, there's a tiger. And he stopped. I mean, of course, I was not shouting, I had to really whisper. And then the tiger stood there, sat there, and we stood there looking into each other's eyes. And after a few minutes, it just got up and walked away from us. So they're extremely quiet. So you really need to understand the jungle too when you're walking. And you have to really take care of elephants and sloth bear. These two are the animals which you need to be cautious about, not really big cats like people think. Two animals you need to be very respectful of. One is the elephant, and the other one is the sloth bear. But otherwise, yeah. So you learn that you need to be very calm when you're in the jungle. So that's what even helped me survive that day when the leopard incidents happened. I was very calm, so I could think. So at one point of time, when it caught hold of my hips and bit it twice, uh, I was for a flash, for a second, I just thought of my family. Otherwise, I was very focused on the leopard. And later, I was on the floor, and the leopard was on me. It had held on to my right arm, and then it was sort of biting me like a rag. It was throwing its head like it is killing a prey. And that's when I realized that it was an extremely serious situation, and if I had to survive, all I can do is by fighting back the animal. So I held on my hand in the leopard's mouth. I didn't want to pull it out. Otherwise, my entire arm would be gone. It would be inside the leopard's mouth. So I took all my strength, pushed up myself with my left hand. First time he gave me back, he hit me with his paw on my chest. And second time when I was able to get up, all I had to do was push him away with my left hand, with my left palm. Oh, that's all which was needed. I needed to make myself look bigger than the animal, and as soon as I was bigger than the leopard, he left me and walked away.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that was what was important, was to think, don't not to get into shock. A lot of deaths happen because of shock, not truly because of animal bites. So thinking calmly, thinking what to do, and understanding the animal's behavior was very helpful that day.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's quite extraordinary. So, I mean, you talked about the experience of spending time, with these wild animals. Was there anyone that you worked with as well who gave advice? Is there anyone who you sort of particularly see as a mentor in terms of understanding the wild places that you've worked?
See, what is very important in conservation and natural history is that you have to learn on your own. People can guide you, they can tell you, but only on foot experience in the forest brings up your naturalistic skills. There's no substitute to it. You can't do a um, um 2 credit class for it or a 3 credit class for it, course for it. You have to really walk the jungles and understand the natural history of the place. But it's a fantastic experience. That's what really makes you appreciate these animals or plants, and passionates and ignites your passion to fight for them, at whatever cost possible. And that's a very umbilical link to nature. That's is very important for us.
Yeah, fantastic. And who would you say is the sort of most interesting person that you've worked with in conservation?
Um, I mean, don't be disappointed that I wouldn't name an ecologist or a biologist or not even a conservationist. Um, one of my most interesting person I work with, and I continue to work with, is our current chief minister. His name is Sidramaya. He comes from a shepherd community. He himself was a shepherd,
Okay.
a livestock grazer, but extremely good with society. He knows he's very well read. He even today, despite being the chief minister of a state, highly populous and a very economically developed state, he reads books. He's very pragmatic. He's very witty, very sharp, and he has got a great concern for society. He's a ruffian. If you talk to him, you'll find him not most diplomatic person. He's not a diplomatic person, but a great supporter of societal issues. So we go, but you need to explain it to him in a language that he understands. And many times he has supported conservation issues, much against the wish of his political party, much against economy. And he really cares for the society. You need to tell him the importance of nature for society. That's when he will turn tables. And I love him, actually. I'm a big fan of that guy.
Yeah, fantastic. And his sort of background from this sort of shepherding family background, has that played
Yes,
a big role in being able to talk to him about these things?
yes, he understands rural. I mean, as I said earlier, conservation is a lot to do with the society, right? All of us realize that. And he understands society like anything. He never went to school till his fifth class, he tells. He went to school only in his fifth class. But his understanding of economy, seriously, he has presented some 18 budgets till now for this state. So his understanding of policies, his understanding of various parts of political science is unbelievable. And even today, his siblings live in the village where he came from, and at very moderate. Unbelievably well-read person for that background.
Yeah, fantastic. So he's been in that role for quite a long time then. I mean, is that typical for politicians in India? And does that make it easier to sort of plan for the long term?
No, actually, he lost elections. He just re-won the elections about a month ago. He's come back as a chief minister again now after 5 years, a gap of 5 years. But he's truly a mass leader. If he talks, people listen to him, and he's very witty. He's very sharp. And though he's a ruffian, like I said earlier, people love him for that wit he has. And he really stands for what he speaks. Though, he's certainly a politician, but he has a great concern for society. I think that's the reason why he came back.
Brilliant. And which conservationist do you think should be on television more?
I think David Coleman. He's never. I don't know if you've read his books, but
no, I haven't. I'm afraid. Yeah, so it'd be great to hear more about him.
Yeah, Monster of God. You should pick up this book.
Ah, yes, of course. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a Bible. It's the way he can write conservation science to a common man is unbelievable. I think David Coleman should be on the television a lot more. He can explain things, science, in a very easy manner where everybody can understand. I think that man should be on television a lot more.
Right. Okay, so going back a bit to to talk about being in the field and some of the sort of less pleasant experiences of being in the field. What's your worst encounter with parasites?
I can't. I don't know. Animals find me for some reason. I had a very serious neurological disorder by a tick bite, something called as Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS, Guillain-Barré syndrome. You can Google for it. It's a very rare neurological disorder. And because of that, I went through a lot of problems. I was semi-paralytic for a while.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, that was my worst experience with the parasite. Ticks are, you need to be really careful of them.
So, I mean, did the doctors identify it quickly? Because, I mean, presumably if it's rare, they didn't know necessarily what to look for.
For some reason, nature has always been very kind to me. When I went to the hospital, to the emergency that day, right in front of me, treating somebody else was a neurologist. What better condition? For some reason, he came and saw me, and he identified, like, within seconds. He knew what it was, and they immediately shifted me to the ICU, where I had to be there for a week, and then on steroids and other things. But that was luck, sheer luck on my part as well.
Wow. Yes. And you mentioned the need to be careful about being with elephants and sloth bears. Are they the species that you're afraid of? Are there any other species that you're afraid of as well?
See, all animals, you need to give them space. You need to respect them. You can't be afraid of animals. I think somehow I feel animals understand you. They find that vibration. If you're calm and quiet, they're they don't get anxious. So it's very important that you're also calm and quiet and not make them anxious. But I have a great respect for elephants and sloth bears, like I said earlier. I take a lot of care when there are elephants around. I also take a lot of care when there are sloth bears around, because sloth bears are really busy animals. They don't care what's happening in the world. They're digging for termites all the time. They're like in their own world. They're like zombies actually. So they can't hear very well. They don't see very well. So you can get very close to them, and they get panicked, and they do what they can do the best. Just run and hit people or whatever it finds on its way. So, and I have seen people whose scalps have been ripped off due to sloth bear attacks.
Aye, aye, aye.
So sloth bears is something I'm very respectful of.
Yeah, and do you find them in the wider landscape? Are they mostly in protected areas, or when do they bump into people?
They're found in a lot of areas, especially in the Deccan Plateau in southern India. Even outside protected areas, they're there in quite good numbers, in good abundances. So they are one of the biggest causes of human injuries and human deaths in India. So
Wow, okay.
they're widely distributed. Actually, we had a student from DICE, I think 2 years ago, who worked with us. I co-supervised her for her master's thesis. She worked on occupancy of sloth bears from our area.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
her name was Elizabeth, I think.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. And what species do you think is the most overrated?
I think lions.
Ah.
I have a bias for species that have natural markings on their body, like tigers and leopards. But I somehow feel lions are overrated. They're a bit drab. I'm sorry if there are anybody who works on lions there. They don't have the charisma of striped tigers.
And have you done any work on lions in India?
No, unfortunately, no. I'm sure it's a very fascinating animal. But we have lions only in one state in India, the
Right.
Asiatic lions, in the state of Gujarat. And I work very far away from them, but I've never had a chance to work on them.
Yeah, so I don't know enough about the Asiatic lion. Did it used to have a much larger range? Would it ever have been found close to the Western Ghats?
Not close to the Western Ghats. It was
Okay.
found all the way till central India, but it ranged into Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iran on those areas and went extinct. It's found only in India now.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, and I know that cheetahs have been reintroduced at the moment, but it sounds as though it's been quite a controversial project. Do you have anything? Do you have anything to comment on that, or is
I
it
mean,
best leaving people to it?
no, if there was any species I would have loved to see come back to India. We lost four large mammals post our independence, and cheetahs were one of them. If we could bring back Asiatic cheetahs to India, that would have been fantastic. We have a subspecies from Africa where there's an attempt to bring them back, but I wish India and Iran had worked together during the 70s and 80s, and there was a new home in India for cheetahs. That is what I would have loved cheetahs with Asiatic cheetahs. They're equally fascinating. They're beautiful, and in Iran, whatever I've read, they live in such hostile and extreme conditions. It must be such a marvelous species to live like that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, and what are the other three species that have gone, mammal species that have gone extinct since
Uh,
independence?
I think the bunting, we used to
Ah,
have
okay.
bunting in India as well. Then we have the Javan and the Javan rhinoceros, sorry.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Um,
And they ranged all the way into Northeast India, and then we lost them. I
okay.
think just as we were getting independence, we lost them in the 40s, late 40s.
Okay. And on a related note, which extinct species would you like to bring back if you could wave a magic wand?
If it was India, I think Asiatic cheetah, certainly.
Okay.
Certainly Asiatic cheetah. There were attempts in the 80s, but it didn't work out for some reason. and now, of course, a subspecies of the African cheetahs. But I would be a bit more happy if it was Asiatic cheetah.
Great. And what's the rarest thing you've ever seen?
I think desert elephants and desert lions in Namibia, in the Damaraland area. Oh, in the Namib Desert, it's unbelievable to see an elephant with no vegetation around, with no tall trees, with no much grass, and also same with lions. Seeing lions in the sand was just mesmerizing. I saw one elephant. Of course, I didn't see a herd of elephant, but that was already overpowering to me. I've seen elephants only in lush green vegetation or in deciduous vegetation, and seeing elephants in the desert and in the dry habitat, I think I never forget it. I'm writing a book in Kannada now, and there's a whole chapter dedicated to these desert lions and elephants. They're fantastic animals. I think they're icons of survival.
Yeah, fantastic. And to placate my plant conservation friends, what's your favorite tree?
I think Gyrocarpus americanus, if people want to look, Google for it. It's a beautiful deciduous tree. It's got a lot of cultural significance in our state as well, and got a beautiful pod. And it shows seasons. That's what I really like about the West as well. If you're in Dice at Canterbury, you'll see the seasons. And this is a deciduous tree, and you see a summer, and you see spring, and you see monsoon. When it starts blooming, everything comes back to life. So it really shows seasons. So I love this tree called Gyrocarpus americanus.
Lovely, lovely. And yes, mentioning being here at Dice, so what do you miss about Canterbury? What was the things that you enjoyed most when you were here for your masters?
I think the walks in Canterbury, lovely. And of course, my classmates. That international cohort is a very special thing about Dice. You get different perspectives, you agree and disagree with perspectives. Then later you understand that it's actually a perspective which is working well in those countries. Just because it's not our perspective doesn't mean it's not working. I think that's the best thing at DICE. You get to learn a lot of different perspectives. And of course, it's a very friendly atmosphere and less crowded, especially at DICE, very few people. So almost everybody. You can bump into each other, them, and some of them are your long-term friends and supporters. I think that's what DICE offers.
Brilliant. Yes, and actually I think some of your classmates on listening in today, so it's lovely that they're here too. And yes, on a related note, in terms of conservation ideas, what would you say is your best idea about conservation that everyone else ignores?
I think the issue of communication, as I said earlier, very simple ideas make a lot of difference in conservation, I think. So we don't have to be really worried about modeling and how do we convince people with data and other things. I think very simple ideas, talking to people makes a lot of difference. That's what I think a lot of us as conservationists are ignoring. It's one of those subjects which has got the least importance in our field, but talking to people, talk to people, talk to people, talk to people. I keep telling my students that's what can get a lot of bang for the buck in conservation. Simple ideas and talking to people.
Brilliant, brilliant. And on a sort of slightly related note, what's the conservation related fact that people commonly get wrong and you can't stop yourself from correcting them when they say it?
You mean general public or common people, or you're asking me?
Yes. Yeah, whoever.
Okay. I think people in India, despite the fact that we have about 25,000 leopards in this country, even now people call them as cheetahs. Everybody calls them as cheetahs. So you can write hundreds of articles, you can correct people hundreds of times, but people continue to call leopards as cheetahs. And that's one of the most difficult things to change about conservation in our country, or about a species in our country. It's as stupid as that, actually.
Oh yeah, no, I mean the reason why I brought up that question is the ones that I can't stop myself are similarly at that fairly basic level.
What is that?
There's several ones. People who call apes monkeys. That's the thing I can't stop myself from correcting.
Is there
that's
somebody
definitely
in the
one of them.
audience who have a experience like that, if they would like to type in?
Yes, we could definitely make it a bit more interactive. And then, yes, so sort of beginning to talk about the broader aspects, and in terms of giving advice. What advice would you give to a student wanting a career in conservation?
See, it's two different fields, ecology and conservation. So if you want to be an ecologist, be good at math. It's extremely important. And take Jim's class. I don't know if Jim is still around at DICE, Jim Grimbridge.
Yes, he's listening in too.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know he
Yeah.
was listening. Okay. Take people like Jim and, of course, you and Richard Griffiths, all of them very seriously. Math is really important. Of course, the younger crowd in DICE like Nick and Matt, who are extremely good at it. So take math seriously. Or else, even with that, I would say discipline, passion, perseverance, and dedication. These are extremely important things in conservation. But there's never a dull life in our lives. Never a dull day. Never a dull day in our lives. Every day is different. Every day is as exhausting as the last one. And that's the best part of conservation, And also the most, I think another advantage we have as conservationists is that we get paid to go to places which other people dream and pay to go to. Like we go to some of the best national parks to work in, and I'm sure it's so expensive for other people to come there, and we get paid to do that, right? That's one of the best perks of being in conservation.
Yes, that's very true. I mean, your trip to Namibia, was that just a holiday, or was that a part of a particular project?
Yeah, I went there to the Cheetah Conservation Foundation, Cheetah
Okay.
Conservation Fund, CCF. So yeah, what better way to see wildlife? And there was a participant in that workshop. This was quite some time ago, and she worked in a lodge in Namibia. So I asked her for her suggestion. Where could I travel in Namibia after the workshop? And after a day, she came back and said, "Yeah, just come with us to our lodge." So she and her husband took me around in the Namib deserts, in the Skeleton Coast Park. What better way to see Namibia than with a Namibian person who knows about their wildlife like the back of their.
Yes, brilliant. And in terms of travel, is there a country that you haven't been to that you would really like to visit?
Brazil. I've always dreamt of going to Amazons. Always dreamt of going to Amazons. I've never done. I hope Richard Bodmer took us there. He never did. I don't know if he's still around. But
well, he's in Peru at the moment, and I'm sure would welcome you. So yeah, you should make a plan.
Yeah, that's one place, and there's another place called Gabon. I had a classmate in my DICE days, and she worked on gorillas in Gabon, and told me so many fascinating things about the bai. So the bai is in Gabon, in the forests of Gabon. So I want to just go and spend a week sitting in one of those bais. That's what I really dream about. There's somebody who has answered actually. Ern Ellington says we get a lot of porpoise stranded on the beaches here, and so many people call them weird dolphins. So I just have to correct that.
Yes,
Dolphins and porpoises.
it is slightly humbling, the fact that species that we think are really, really different and obvious, that actually the general public find it much more complicated. Years ago when I was working in Uganda, there was an NGO that was focused on chimp conservation, and they were told that someone had got a baby chimp as a pet right in the north of Uganda. So they travelled all the way up there to discover that it was a baboon. And so it's species that we think are really distinct. It's not. It's often not as easy for other people.
Yeah, that's what shows that how conservation is. That the huge gap between people and conservationists and ecologists. What we think is very simple is very complicated for general public to understand. That's why it's very important to communicate in the simplest possible language to people.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, there's a UK comedy series that I'm very fond of, and I can just remember that everyone on it, it's a sort of panel show, thinking that a goose was a duck. And again, you're just going, wow, it's, yeah, there really is a big gap. And in terms of the sort of, where do you see the conservation going in the future?
If you talk about species conservation, I think some species will certainly, unfortunately, go extinct. But some of the habitat generalists, but also endangered, will survive. Like tigers will survive, in my opinion, because they're habitat generalists. So everything, the foundation for species conservation is, of course, habitats, right? So I think habitat generalists have a much larger chance than specialists. But if we all work together in the right direction, I think the future is still very hopeful. I don't. I'm an optimist, conservation optimist, and if there are going to be tigers anywhere in the world, even after I die, I think it's surely going to be in India, in our state. That's the kind of optimism I have. Society has a lot of soft corner for wildlife in India, despite the fact that we lose a lot of people. There's a lot of economic loss. There's a lot of human wildlife conflict. People still have a space for animals in our country. So tigers are certainly going to be in India.
Ah, fantastic. And in terms of the sort of younger generation of people in India, of people living in the Western Ghats, do you see any sort of difference in their attitudes and views of wildlife?
I think there's a remarkable awareness which has come up in the younger generation because of digital media, because of technology. But as always, conservation is it's like a business. So you really need to work on a daily basis. If you don't work for a while, your business goes down. So all of us have to keep working on saving species and habitats. Certainly, if we continue to work, like any business would flourish, even conservation will flourish.
Brilliant. Well, yes, it's lovely to finish our conversation on such a positive note. So I really want to thank the people who've joined us today. We'll also be editing this and putting it on YouTube, so please share it with your friends once it's ready there. Really want to thank Faye and Nui for helping organise the event. And next month we'll be talking to Humphrey Crick, who's a friend and recent member of the DICE Advisory Board, who works for Natural England and has got a lot of interesting things to say about conservation in the UK and more broadly. But just wrapping up now, thank you so much, Sanjay. It was lovely to speak to you. As I knew we would get lots of really interesting answers, given how much you know, how much you've experienced, and how much you thought about conservation. So it's been fantastic to be able to chat today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks to you and DICE, and also the entire fraternity who have been part of the chat today. It is always lovely to come back to DICE. I hope I can come back physically sometime soon.
Brilliant. We'll look forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Cheers for now. Bye-bye.